Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head back down to Belgium and we're going to take a look at yet another lambic beer, and this is a brewery who I only introduced you to for the first time a couple of weeks back, so we're going to have a taste of my second beer from them. So for this review we are going to go back to Beersel, a little bit to the south of Brussels, and we're having a taste of another beer from Brouwerij Fonteinen. So this particular one is their Cuvee Arman Gaston and it comes in at 6.7% ABV. Apparently this beer is derived from 3 different beers that they brew within the Fonteinen brewery. So really looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. Special shout out in this video of course to Chris Contreras, who made this review possible. He sent me a couple of lambic beers up. He really enjoys that style and wanted to see what my take on a few of the different lambic beers would be, and this is a style that I wasn't overly familiar with, so it has been a really kind of interesting journey if you like, and I do hope that I can review some more of these for you over the next little while. But a huge thank you to Chris once again for sending this beer up to me, and I hope you guys are enjoying this, the presence of more lambic beer reviews on the channel. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fonteinen before. Hopefully I can add some more in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Fonteinen, and then on to my brewery notes. So Brouwerij Fonteinen can be found in Beersel, as I mentioned earlier, which is in Vlaams Brabant near Brussels in Belgium, and they can trace their history back to 1883 when a Geuze facility was built by Jacobus van der Linden at his inn. But the name Fonteinen is assumed to have come from 3 porcelain pumps in the inn from which the lambic, faro and kriek beers were poured. But then Jacobus passed the family on to his son Jan Baptist, who also served as the mayor of Beersel between 1953 and 1958. But he later stopped the business and eventually looked for a buyer, which came in the form of Gaston de Belder and his wife Raymonde de Donker. But under their guidance, the business started to do very, very well, and it enjoyed a 10-year expansion period, which also included the opening of a restaurant, and they moved to their current location on the Herman Teerlinkplein, which is a street named after a Belgian writer, quite a famous Belgian writer actually, who lived in Beersel from the year 1936. But Gaston then in turn passed on the brewery to his 2 sons Arman and Guido in 1982, and they later installed a 10 hectolitre brewery in 1998. In 2009 they actually stopped brewing for a period of 3 years until October 2012, when the new brewery facility was up and running. But today they produce Geuze, kriek and lambic beers. The lambic was first produced in 1999, and the Geuze is apparently blended using lambic beers brewed by Boon, Girardin and Lindemans. And this brewery is actually technically a Geuze Stekerij, which means they blend Geuze beer using old and new lambics from other breweries. If you have the they brew their own beers as well, but they are technically a lambic brewery and also a Geuze Stekerij as well. I think you can say lambic brouwerij in if I'm pronouncing the Dutch correctly, of course, or the Flemish, however you want to term it. But yeah, this is a brewery that seems to be very, very well regarded within the kind of sour beer category, or lambic beer category, and they were one of the ones, you find these guys on a lot of lists. If you research about the lambic beers, this is one of the brewery whose names always really comes up actually. But I really enjoyed the Eau de Geuze that I had a go at from these guys before. I think this is a beer it is partly based on that recipe as well, but this one is made using 3 different lambics brewed specifically at Fonteinen as well. And a Cuvee beer, of course, is when you've got a mix of different things. So I guess this one is basically the 2 brothers mix, but this one's a little bit higher in alcohol than some of the other ones. It comes in at 6.7%, and it says on the side here that this one was bottled on the 8th of March 2018, and it recommends that you can keep it in the bottle until the 26th of November 2038. So you can age these lambic beers for a hell of a long time. But yeah, really interested in this one. If I lived in Belgium, I actually would be tempted to you know, to buy a bottle of these and just, you know, age them and do an experiment with them. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing, that, actually. But yeah, one of the, as I say, one of the breweries whose names always come up when you talk about lambic beers and sour beers and stuff like that. So if you get the chance to try some of their beers, I highly recommend that you do. And as I say, a huge thank you to Chris once again for sending me up these lambics and making these reviews possible. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Brouwerij Fonteinen just now. I really enjoyed the last beer I had from them, and hopefully this is another one that follows in the same light. So let's get rid of the brewery notes and let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So apparently, for this year, this is one of the 2017-2018 version of the Cuvee Arman Gaston. And this one, it's only recently that they've changed the labels to be these sort of glass printed things rather than being paper labels, of course. These are the brand new labels that they've put out there. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. I do like the artwork on this, but the only thing that actually distinguishes these beers as being different is the little sticker that they put down in the corner there, other than the back label, of course. But yeah, tells you a little bit on about the back of the beer. It's, you know, it's brewed with it. It's three. Basically tells you it's 3 different beers brewed within the Fonteinen facility, and it tells you a little bit more about the beer as well. This specific Cuvee Arman Gaston was aged was 6 something. I'm not quite sure about the Dutch on this one. Actually, it would be nice if they put these in English, but then again, Chris bought this in Belgium for me, so you know, that's the main reason why it probably doesn't have the English on it. Maybe if it was an export version, they would put English labels on it. But there you can see, there is the little bottle cap of the Brouwerij Fonteinen there. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the taste, and then I'm really curious to see how this one turns out. Actually, I think this will be a really quite nice beer. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, you can see nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and let's get it out and into the glass. I did look up this one on Rate Beer and Untappd and things like that, but there wasn't too much. I couldn't really find too much in the way of information about this one in terms of like how long they age it for, and stuff like that. And it doesn't actually even say that on the bottle. It says on the back here. It basically just says I think it says it was aged on the back here for 3 years. The blend itself is aged for about 3 years or something like that. But yeah, as I say, a cuvee is always a mixed beer, and we know that the Fonteinen are very, very good when it comes to these sour beers, so I'm sure it will be really quite nice actually, and it is based on the Eau de Geuze kind of mix as well. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured a nice, bright orange colour. This one, this is almost the same colour as some of the IPAs that I would drink, of course, some of the West Coast IPAs. It's very similar actually in its appearance to that. The bubbles in the head on this one are quite big actually, I would say, and one of the things that you always get, of course, with these beers, the Belgian beers are usually bottle fermented, and that makes them very, very good for aging. They always change a little bit over time. But yeah, with this one you can see the carbonation is fairly active, a couple of big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few smaller ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you can see if I put my fingers behind the glass, it has a nice little bit of haze to it, this one, but very, very similar in terms of its colour and appearance to an IPA or something like that. But yeah, nothing particularly out of the ordinary when you consider that this beer is a Geuze beer. This is the normal colour that you would usually find from this particular beer style. This beer, incidentally, is 375 centilitres, so not too much more than a regular 330ml can. And this, of course, I should say too, this isn't the normal glass I think that you would drink a lambic beer from, but I like using this one because it's the best all-rounder. I like using the tulip glasses because they are the best all-rounders when it comes to these different beer styles. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Ooh, now that's interesting. This one has a really nice little malty presence to it. You can smell some of that smooth white bready, almost wheaty quality out of this one. It's got a little touch of a toasty, grainy cereal type thing, which is nice. There's definitely a little bit of a biscuity sweetness in there. I don't think it's quite caramelly, but yeah, it does have a little bit of a toasty, cereally, grainy type note to it, which is really interesting. The malt base on this one really is actually capturing imagination. There's almost a little touch of a spicy note to this beer, which I think will be really, really interesting. Yeah, it almost reminds me of like sticking your head into into, you know, the tube of barbecue Pringles, it almost has that little note to it, which is not what you expect from a Gose beer as well. It really has this toasty element to it, so just take a little bit of time and notice that for yourself actually. That's a really unusual aroma that I wouldn't normally expect, particularly from a Belgian sour beer. But yeah, a little touch of a woody quality to this one. Of course, this beer will have been aged in oak fodders for quite a little while, I'm sure. But yeah, I really like how this one is going together. The malty base on that's really interesting. That toasty, grainy, cereally element that this beer has is really nice. A little bit of biscuit sweetness, like I said. But yeah, I really like how everything is going together with this one. So yeah, a little touch of a grassy and floral quality from the hops, which is what you would expect, but nothing too overly prominent. You've got a little bit of that tart citricy note. The fruity side of this beer is quite interesting too. Yeah, there's a little touch of the kind of appley, peary ester that you would normally expect from this particular style. But you've also got a little, I think there's a little touch of a red fruity note to this one. I don't know if it's quite figgy or berryish or exactly what it is, but there is an element of an almost candied strawberry ester or something like that to this beer. But yeah, the thing that's really striking me in particular about this one is the the thing that's really striking me about this one is the sharper it is just that little malty presence that this beer has. That smells as if it's going to be really quite nice. So as I always say, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beers before you get stuck in. But in comparison to the other lambics that I've tried before, I would say that this one is a little bit more malty and toasty and things like that actually. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma for yourself. But now it's time for us to have a taste of this beer. So this one is the Cuvee Arman Gaston from Brouwerij, Fonteinen in Beersel in Vlaams, Brabant, just near Brussels in Belgium. Let's get stuck into this. Once again, thank you to Chris for sending this beer. Slange, Skal, Proust, Santé. Ooh. Yeah. That one's nice actually. So, again, with these sour beers, one of the things you always have to talk about with these is the impact. To me, this is one of the ones that has a slightly smaller impact to it. This to me almost strikes me as being a little bit more kind of juicy, if that makes sense. The sourness in this is pretty nice, I have to say. I like how everything goes together in this. Yeah, I like this one actually. It's definitely one of the more, it's one of the less puckering and slightly more malty. Definitely this is a slightly more malty lambic beer, I think, than some of the other ones that I've come across, and I do like that. But I mean, it's one of the things I've always leaned a little bit more towards the more malty beers, regardless of the style. I mean, I love Doppelbocks, I love Dunkel lagers, the quadruples as well. Like, I like the big kind of brown sugary beers and things like that as well. Although I do like a good tripel, of course, and a blonde as well from Belgium. But this is a nice beer. This one, this might be my favourite lambic that I've tried so far actually out of all of them, and that's kind of fitting because this is the last one out of the beers that Chris sent me that I'm filming. But yeah, that's really nice actually. I do like how everything is going together with this. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer a little bit then. So as we always talk about with these sour beers, with the lambic beers, you have to talk about the impact. As I was saying, this beer is by no means the most puckering of the different lambic beers that you're going to come across. This one actually it does have a little bit of sharpness in the beginning, but it's one of the wetter, kind of juicier, sharp qualities that you're going to come across. It has less of an impact, I think, than some of the other ones, but that's not a bad thing. I do like that actually. It's more of a juicy sharpness that this beer has. As the flavour kind of rolls across the middle of your tongue, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of pale malty quality in the beginning of that. You can feel that just roll across the middle of your palate there. You've got a nice little touch of graininess in there, which is good. you do have this, you can feel that this beer, I think, it really does dry out a little bit the further you go into the palate. But the middle of your palate, it starts off with this nice smooth white bready wheaty quality. It's got a little bit of a grainy dryness there the further you go into the flavour, but there is a little bit of a biscuity sweetness in the middle of the palate too. Yeah. If you go to the very centre of your palate, there is a little bit of a kind of biscuity sweetness. It reminds me of the McVitie's digestive qualities, but when you come further forward on the palate, you start to get the more woody elements out of this beer. There's a little touch of vanilla in there, because usually it's oak, of course, that they use to, it's oak that they use to age these beers. You can, if you go to the very centre of your palate where you get these biscuity flavours and then go forward, you do get a little bit of a vanilla quality in there, but you also get the a nice little bit of a woody element when you just go out to the sides of that as well, some of the oaky smoothness in there. That's really quite nice actually. But I really like how everything's going together in this beer, and as I say, that malt base in the centre of your palate just dries out a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste there. So that it's really nice, as I say, how everything goes together in this one. But yeah, just pay attention to that. As I say, the thing that's really striking me about this beer as being a little bit more unusual is the slight sweetness and graininess that the malt base has in here. It just has a little bit of that toasty cereal element, but it's nice how everything goes together. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of your palate, there is a distinctive little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you can feel that just smooths out a little bit. There is almost a little touch of a herbal quality there in the back corners of your palate too, but as you come further forward towards the front corners of the palate, it's a little touch floral, and then round the very front curve of your palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy and things like that, which is quite nice. And behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where some of those juicy, fruity esters start to come out of the beer. Yeah, I do like how everything's going together in this one. As I say, it's just, this is one of these beers where it's all about how these different flavours just blend together. And for me, I like the fruity side of this one. There is a little bit of that typical kind of lemony citric sharpness to this beer, but the further you go into the flavour, you get a little bit more of that appley, peary kind of ester to this one. But I'm really finding the more and more that I drink of this beer, the more the kind of toasty, grainy quality is creeping towards the front of my tongue. So it's really interesting in that particular regard actually. It's quite unusual, that, I have to say. But yeah, the further that I go into the flavour with this one, the more of the toasty, grainy notes start to come out of this beer. So yeah, that's really that's one of the more unusual points about this beer, I have to admit. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, as I say, there's a little touch of a peary, appley ester to this one. It's leaning a little bit more towards the pear, I would say, out of that. There's a little bit of sharpness from that lemony kind of citricy note. There's maybe a little touch of a slightly reddish fruity quality to this one, but that's quite minimal. For me, it really is leaning more towards the kind of peary side of things on the esters. But overall, like I say, this beer, if I'm comparing it to the other lambics I've had, this is one of the more grainy, malty kind of ones. It does have an element of sweetness to it, but mainly it's a kind of grainy, toasty lambic beer actually. But I like what they've done with this. I think this is very cool when you go into these lambic styles and you can see all the different things that you can actually do with this beer. I wouldn't have thought that a lambic beer you could have such a toasty, grainy presence to it, but obviously you can, and you can get away with that quite well. So yeah, have a go at this beer for yourself and just see what you think. I quite like what they've done with this one, and definitely very different from the other beers that I've had, and definitely not one of the more sour lambic beers that I've come across, not one of the more dry and puckering ones, I have to admit. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I would say this beer is mid-bodied. Yeah, bottom end of mid-bodied for me, this beer. Carbonation has a little bit of a prickle to it, which is what you expect from a sour beer, of course, particularly Belgian beers, because they are bottle fermented, or bottle conditioned, I should say. The mouthfeel in this one overall, it's got a good balance of kind of being quite fairly crisp actually. And I think it's the grainy side of the beer that gives it that crispness, but it's also got a little touch of an oily and a little touch of a wet character as well, so I like how everything goes together in this one. So yeah, in the as I said, with the malt base in this one, it does have a little bit of a balance between that toasty, grainy side of things, and also a good bit of smoothness in there. It does have some sweetness and smoothness. The smoothness from the woody flavours, a little bit of sweetness from the caramelly notes, but it does have a little bit of that toasty, grainy note in there that I was talking about as well. You've got a nice little bit of bitterness from the hops, but this beer is by no means going to blow your head off in terms of IBUs. I think we're talking about 20-30 IBUs, something like that. It just has a nice little bit of floral and grassy freshness to it. You can pick up that grassiness around the front curve of the palate, of course. And then you've got a nice little bit of a juicy kind of fruity note in there as well, and some of the sharp citric characters. But like I said, this is not one of the sharper and more tart, I guess you could say, lambic beers that you're going to come across. This one has a little bit of a lower impact in comparison to some of the other ones. It's not one of the drier ones that you're going to come across, that's for sure. But overall, again, it's a really nice beer. And I've been surprised to see how malty and grainy you can actually make these beers. I wouldn't have expected something like this from a lambic beer. So this was a really interesting one that Chris has sent me. So yeah, like I say, this little lambic journey that I'm doing to get more well versed in this particular beer style is becoming very, very interesting. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to review, and as always, I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on this one. This has been interesting, so have a go at some of these Fonteinen beers for yourself if you get the chance. But yeah, this one was the Cuvee Arman Gaston from Brouwerij Fonteinen in Beersel in Vlaams-Brabant, just outside of Brussels in Belgium. A huge thank you again to Chris for sending this beer up to me. One of the less sour and more malty lambic beers that I've come across, I have to say. But I certainly look forward to trying more from Fonteinen over the next couple of years, and I thank you guys again for watching my beer reviews. So until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fonteinen as well. Do give me some more lambic recommendations too, and I'll keep an eye out for those. But thank you again for watching. Make sure you check out my social media, and I will catch you guys very soon. This is the Cuvee Arman Gaston from Brouwerij Fonteinen in Beersel, just outside of Brussels in Vlaams-Brabant in Belgium. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, santé, prost.